Oh, I can go now? Okay. So yeah, so as I was saying before, I was told to stop. This presentation is conflict management, how to not punch that big dumb jerk in his big dumb jerk face. Okay? A couple sources. Most people do them at the beginning. I'm doing them at the end, or do it the other way. Crucial Conversations and Crucial Confrontations are phenomenal books if you're interested in dealing with difficult people, or you have to have a lot of difficult conversations. They're written by like 15 people, so I'm not going to list off all the authors because it takes forever. And then Managing Humans is just a book about managing engineers and software people. That's a lot of fun. You should all read. So, Global Game Jam's coming up in a few months, and we wanted to have a good talk about how to deal with other people. The Global Game Jam tends to be a high-stress environment because, I mean, you're trying to make something really fast. It's generally something you're really invested in. And as game developers, we tend to be kind of introverted people. And so if something's bugging us, we usually just ignore it until we explode in a fit of rage and stab somebody with an Xbox controller. And that's not good. We want to avoid that. So I wanted to give you guys some tips and kind of outline what I've learned over the years as an RA and working residential life and working with difficult people, how to handle that and how to have some of those talks. So to start with, we're going to define some stuff. The two things we're going to be talking about are conversations and confrontations. So if something is still a conversation, these can be really high stake things, stuff that people care about, but at this point they're still relatively reasonable. It's mostly about picking a path. This is which game should we make. We need to change our game. It's the unpleasant talk that you need to have, but everybody's kind of shared in the unpleasantness, right? We're all on equal footing of, okay, nobody wants to talk about how our game isn't fun, but we need to because our game isn't fun. Confrontations are about addressing, and I spelled that all kinds of wrong. Confrontations, this is when the fighting gloves come off, or come on. This is where you're talking about accountability. This is you're not pulling your weight. Or that thing you just did is completely unacceptable and you can't be doing that. Does anybody have any examples of some of these that you've either dealt with or so we can categorize stuff? So who's dealt with difficult people? Don't lie, you all have. Okay.
Every day.
Stories, not names. Who does anybody want to share a yeah?
I'm difficult myself, but yeah. And I'm gonna wrap me out. I mean, last game jam, I was supposed to do a lot of programming and I didn't.
Okay. Okay. And that would be a confrontation, right? Because that's an unpleasant talk where the unpleasantness is mostly on you. The people, whoever's confronting you is uncomfortable, but they're uncomfortable for very different reasons, and we'll kind of get into that. So the key with both of these is safety, right? Then there are a bunch of different types of safety. There's physical safety, there's the safety of esteem, there's the safety of control. And any time the safety starts coming at risk, both of these types of discussions break down very, very quickly, right? Dana, come here. Pitch me. Okay, good. That'll work great for this demonstration. Tell me any game idea.
Cats blowing up and exploding.
Okay, I think we should really be working on a serial killer simulator. What do you think about that?
Okay, that's a good idea.
Right, so she feels physically unsafe, so we can't actually have a conversation. You can sit down now, I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable, but that's what I do. And that was the very basic physical safety, but there's other types of safety too, especially when you talk about confrontation. A lot of people will get defensive when you're confronted with, why didn't you do this? Because it feels like you're attacking that person, right? And I'm sure we've all been on the opposite end of that, of we've been confronted with something we didn't do, and it feels like they're not correcting us, they're attacking us. And one of the things that we're gonna be talking about today is how to do that without attacking the other human being and making them feel like it's constructive criticism and not an attack. So, but first we need to identify how to tell when somebody's feeling unsafe, okay? So once you start getting into this, you start this conversation, signs that will tell you this other person is not feeling safe, we're not being productive right now. And it all boils down to fight or flight, basically. There are two basic responses. Silence, which includes a lot of different things, but generally withholding information. This is when people try to redirect the conversation. They start just giving very simple one-word answers. They try to obfuscate what's going on because they like big words. But silence, right? They're trying to not engage in this activity because it's potentially dangerous for them. The other is violence. This is when they start attacking your credibility. They become aggressive. They yell at you in a less overtly aggressive way. They'll start picking apart your idea. They'll start using ad hominem attacks, or start throwing red herrings out about like, oh well, you're just an angry feminist. Your opinion doesn't matter. Like that's an aggressive, violent response to that discussion because they're not feeling safe with how the conversation's going. So to establish that safety, there's two things we have to. There are two things we have to establish. A mutual purpose, right? So I'm not going to want to have any discussion with you if I think that you and my goals don't line up. If we're talking about which color the dog should be in our latest game, and I'm picking blue because I think that'll be more fun, and you're picking green because all the studies show that green will get people to spend more money, we're never going to agree. We're never going to have a productive conversation because at the end of the day, you're talking about how to make more money, and I'm talking about how to make something more fun. And if our values don't line up, then that's not gonna, we're just not gonna get anywhere, and that conversation's gonna go nowhere. It's just gonna be us going back and forth over and over again. But this would be more fun, but this will make more money. And we've all been in that conversation, where you just keep restating statements over and over and over again, because you're coming from different places. The other thing you have to do is establish mutual respect, right? If you don't respect the other person, or if you don't feel they respect you, again, the conversation's going to go nowhere because you're going to feel unsafe from the perspective. You're going to feel your esteem and your control are going to feel unsafe, right? I keep gesturing over here even though there's nothing here. So the trick to working with these emotions, right? As you get into these, you have to establish those two things, and you also have to kind of manage where you're at as well. Because if you become super angry yourself, you're going to start doing the same type of stuff. You're going to start doing the silence or violence type of responses. So as you go through, the way emotions work. All right, so you receive some sort of stimulus. You interpret that. That gives you a feels. And then you take action. And for the most part, people aren't really super conscious of that whole process. And what they forget is that this part exists. And you'll say something like, he said something mean and that made me angry, so I yelled at him. But this interpretation, what's actually happening is, something mean was said. I interpreted that as an attack, which made me angry. And so I yelled. So as you have this discussion with, big dumb jerkhead, keep in mind that you are going through this process and they are going through this process. And so the discussion has to be focused on this, and you have to be very careful of how you do this. If you change your response to this, if he's mean to you and you instead interpret it as he's feeling threatened, then you don't become angry, you become concerned. Or you become sympathetic, and your action changes from an antagonistic response to something that can better lead the situation to a positive conclusion instead of just a big dumb shouting match. Does anybody else have another example of like an action that has elicited an emotional response from them, or has gone through something like this in the past?
I've just worked with like volatile people where
Right.
even if you just give any sort of direction,
Right.
suddenly that's even
Right.
interpreted as an attack,
Mhm.
and that makes them angry, and that even just like
Right.
a simple piece of direction turns out to be
Yeah.
something that they lash out against.
Okay.
So how, like, when working with especially difficult people, is this
Yeah.
okay for me to ask now?
Absolutely. No.
When working with especially difficult people where you can't even give constructive criticism
Right.
without it being taken very harshly,
Okay.
how can you,
That actually leads to
how can you go about doing that? Because I've seen that at both game jams and just in the workplace, where you're trying to give feedback, you're trying to give criticism, and it's not, there's just a wall.
Right. So the general process, and this is kind of what all this has been building up to. It's you can do it with. Okay, and I hate these initialism things, but it works, so we're gonna go with it. Okay, so you're dealing with big dumb jerkhead, and they're being a big dumb jerkhead because he's a big dumb jerkhead. So you start by sharing facts, and it's really hard to make sure that these are actually facts, because there will be stuff that you think are a fact that are in fact an opinion. This has to be very, very concrete stuff of, I have not gotten a report from you in 3 weeks. You have not come home at a decent hour, if it's like a significant other. Very concrete, you can't tell me it's not true, because we both know that it's true. So you share whatever those facts are, and then you tell a story about how you're interpreting those, right? So you haven't been doing your reports. I'm interpreting that as you're losing interest in your position, or something's going wrong with you. And then you have to ask the other people involved in this conversation, because this doesn't have to be a one-on-one deal, what their side of this is. Be like, well, my facts are I've had this and this come up, and I feel like you're breathing down my neck about these, BS reports. Or, I have these 15 things that you've assigned to me, and I feel like I'm overburdened. So by doing that, everybody gets to share their version of how this played out. And what you'll often find is something went wrong here. Somewhere at some point, somebody did something, especially with game developers and technical people, because we tend to be more introverted and we tend to not like dealing with other people, myself included. We will do something that we don't realize came across as really offensive or really mean. And so I will say something that to me seems perfectly harmless, but they'll see it as an attack for one reason or another. And then everything cascades from there. So then you can start talking about like, okay, well, what caused this? I see that our stories disagree in this way. We had these shared facts, but we're interpreting what happened differently. And so we can talk about why we're interpreting that differently. And ultimately, this is where you want to start coming to some sort of conclusion or solution. And then encourage testing and say like, well, would it work better if next time we did this? Would it work better next time if I gave you written feedback instead of verbal feedback, because evidently I come across as really mean when I talk to you because I'm a giant guy and I'm loud. And so it seems I'm mean even when I'm not. Or maybe, So I keep giving you feedback throughout the day because that's how I like receiving feedback, but you'd rather receive your feedback all in one giant email where it's just like, here are the 400 things you did wrong this week. Some people like that. I like that. You keep bugging me every day, I feel like I'm being acted like hunted. But if you give me a big one list, like, oh, this is an actionable, this is a task that I can do, fix this. So usually, almost always it comes down to that. And so by going through this, you can kind of address this pattern, this process, and attack it where the problem is, which is almost always here. Sometimes it's here, but usually if the stimulus is bad, it's because somebody else went through the chain of events, or you're dealing with a truly irrational person, which we'll get to. Like the truly scary, like sociopath people. So does anybody have any questions about yeah?
So this actually sounds familiar to me, the
Mhm.
state acronym. I mean, I've never heard that before, but those steps.
Mhm.
And I've been in a situation with someone that I was supervising
Right.
where I would try to do this,
Mhm.
and it kind of worked for a while, but with a pattern that happened, which was probably doing something I was doing wrong on my part,
Right.
was that it kind of gave this person a sense of they had control over the situation. So then what started happening was they'd be the one to actually point out, you're doing this, I don't like the way you're doing this, you're doing it wrong, tell me it this way.
Right.
And becoming very domineering over how I was managing them.
Okay. So there are a lot of ways to kind of address how that's going on. It's okay to go back if they share their story, and then when you get down to here, they start distorting the story, they start distorting this fact. You can go back there and say, like, no, we agree, this is what you told me you were feeling, or this is what you thought was going on. Now you're telling me something different. What's actually going on? And a lot of times, what people say is going wrong and what is actually going wrong are not the same things, which is really unfortunate because people are really bad about, we're really bad about admitting when we feel we're at fault, but even worse, a lot of times we're not. We tend to have a lot of feelings and not understand why we have those feelings, or we do things and we're not really sure why. And we justify it in bad ways. And so that kind of distorts this. The best advice I can give is to stay focused on, it's really easy when you're having this conversation for it to turn into just a deluge of problems, right? Because no relationship is perfect, and I could find the love of my life and we could sit down and have this type of conversation about leaving the toilet seat up, and it'll turn into a laundry list of just shit. So the thing is, when you have this conversation, you really have to focus on what the specific problem you're trying to solve at this particular junction is. If it's punctuality, if it's quality of work, but as soon as you try to turn it into like an aggregate scenario, it gets a lot messier, because you essentially give whoever you're talking to the ability to just change topics, which they're going to naturally want to do because that's part of that silence. That silence response is to just change what we're talking about so that we don't have to talk about what I screwed up. Also, when you're dealing with accountability stuff, there are two like kind of refinements to that. One is when you tell this story, you need to make sure to describe the gap. So you need to make it very clear of like, this is what the expectations were, and this is what actually happened, and this is where they don't line up. And it can be a little more difficult if it's somebody did something flagrantly inappropriate. But then the discussion becomes, this is what the expectations are, and this is what you did, and this is why it's not appropriate. I expect GDC to be a professional environment because IGDA is a professional organization, and you just sexually harassed me. And that's not okay. To give a rather extreme example. Are there any other, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was helpful.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
two things I'll add, like, that have kind of been staples for me is just making sure if you get we communicate a lot via email, when we have client requests and all this kind of change requests, whatever, build feedback. And And, responding to those, we usually make sure that we give it a day. It's very easy to let all the emotions get in the way. When you first see it, it's the end of the day, 9, 10 o'clock sometimes, very tired physically, but making sure that those are just given a day before you respond. We might write the email then, but we always give it 24 hours to chill before we actually hit the send button. And then the second thing is just making sure that we change up how we're doing the delivery of the information if stuff just isn't setting.
Right.
So this might not necessarily be a conflict, but in a case where we're going back and forth frequently through instant messenger or email with the client, or even within team, if there's something that's not landing properly, always change up the communication.
Right.
So get on the phone as much as you can, because inflection and just kind of shooting the shit a little bit helps to soften the tone of the conversation, especially if you're getting ready to deal with some bad news.
Those are both excellent. Other stuff you can do to maintain safety, you should never be having a conversation in a group, because then everybody's ganging up on people, right? I highly recommend you not do it at come into my office. Those don't really work very well either, because you are naturally in a position of power over that person. If you are in your office and they're in the desk, in the crappy chair desk, yeah.
How would you recommend doing it in a game jam environment when everybody's constantly in the same place?
I would find a quiet corner. I mean, we are all in the same place, but that doesn't mean we're all at the same table, right? If you go over to the kitchen areas, usually, if we're at Semitronics, the kitchen area is usually pretty open and empty. You can always step outside. But try to find a place. I mean, obviously, it's not a perfect environment, but you can have that sort of thing. And also, if it's a minor thing, the safety issue becomes less of a concern. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's a larger, hey, you haven't done anything all week. You joined our group and you haven't done anything. That's a conversation you probably don't want to have in front of a group, because then whoever that is gonna feel ganged up on, and they're gonna be too concerned with covering their ass to actually talk about this with you. Other stuff to safety, be very aware of your body positioning in relationship to the other person. Using myself as an example, when I was an RA, pretty much anytime I would talk to a student in this type of environment, I would make sure I was on the floor, because I'm a giant, and even if we're both standing, I'm towering over you. So you gotta make sure that whoever it is feeling comfortable. Usually when I was dealing with that, I wasn't doing these as much. Usually with this, I can just bring the authority hammer, but for this, it would be somebody just had a good friend die and I had to talk to them. Or, hey, we're concerned because you haven't eaten in 3 days, or I'm worried you might have an eating disorder. Or, hey, you haven't showered in 3 weeks and you smell really bad. And doing that, you really have to make sure that the other person is at ease. And so making sure that your eye level is equal or lower, unless you're worried that it's gonna turn into a thing. You wanna make sure that your voice stays calm and relatively quiet, even if they start yelling at you. Because as soon as if they start yelling at you and you start yelling at them, it's just gonna escalate, and very quickly it's gonna become unproductive. You don't wanna interrupt, regardless of how outrageous whatever they're saying is. Just let them finish. And there are a lot of little things to let them know that you are listening. Mirroring, paraphrasing, asking more questions, making sure that you truly understand, because a lot of us are bad with the word talking. And making sure, once they make, that story statement, repeat it back to them, but paraphrasing it to make sure that you're on the same page as to what exactly that story meant. Especially if they're turning into a mess, like a crying, sobbing mess, then, don't be afraid of the silence, just let them get it out, and then be like, okay, so what I'm hearing is that, the way I'm following up with you right now is coming across as very attacky and, very attacky and nagging, and I want to resolve that. Don't be afraid to apologize if you are. You can't go into this conversation and assume that you're not part of the problem. Neither of these will work if you aren't willing to step out and be like, okay, I'm not perfect, I could have screwed something up here. Don't assume that you're the problem, but I mean, if it comes out that something that you're doing, it doesn't even have to be intentional. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm the loud, scary guy. Okay, I'm coming across as loud and scary. That's my bad. I'm sorry. I made a joke about something I shouldn't have. You know, that's on me. Like, I apologize. I didn't mean that to be offensive. I didn't realize your mom had just died. Probably shouldn't have been making all those your mom jokes. Actual situation that happened to me. Okay, so this was all like a big, complicated mess. What I'm gonna give you guys is like the quick magic bullet solution now for Game Jam to like make all this up so you don't have to remember all of this. And it's 3 magic words. Anytime somebody starts to get in your face about something irrational, but, and these tie up with this. So the way this works, somebody give me something that I've done to piss you off in the last 6 months. Get it out, come on.
Early on, I drive you home the other night, but you paid me.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah, I don't have a car, so I bum rides off a lot of people. So, I understand that driving me around is inconvenient. But I don't have a car, and getting around for me in general is really inconvenient. And let's see if we can work out some way where I don't have to, I can share rides with other people, or I can figure out another way to get places. With the I statement, you're trying to do these 2 things kind of mushed up, right? You state, you make it clear that you understand where the other person is coming from. I understand that you're feeling hurt about whatever. I understand that you don't like that our game is about raccoons. This tells the other person that you're listening and that it makes them feel safe because, you know, you're sharing common purpose and you're sharing mutual respect because you're clearly listening to them and you're not invalidating what they're saying. But, and this is where you start bridging that, describing the gap and telling your side of the story. You know, I get that driving me around is a pain in the butt, but I bet public transportation is more of a pain in the butt. Like, you know, I also have a side to this story that you also need to hear, and there's some sort of disjoint, and then the and is where you propose some kind of solution, ideally some kind of solution. If not, this tends to be where people kind of, because it's hard to come up with something like right off the bat. But it could just be as simple as, and let's see if we can work something else out. But by doing this, you can effectively diffuse their anger because you're addressing that they feel angry and you understand their interpretation, but you're also showing that this interpretation was messed up for whatever reason, and you're ready, you know, and let's come up with a better way to do this. So this is the part where you guys get to come play. I need 3 folks. Wes, Carol, 1 more. I will pick on people. Okay, stand in front of one of these words.
You get to be the butt.
Okay.
Well, we're all the butt of this, it's fine.
All right. So guys, we're in a game jam group and we're making this game, and I don't really feel I'm pissed off because I feel like you guys are completely ignoring everything I say, and I feel like I don't have any say in this project. You are each responsible for the clause of the sentence that you are standing in front of. So
I understand that it feels like we're not listening to you right now.
But your ideas are stupid.
And I think we can do better.
That's actually a question that I had. How do you avoid making the butt sound
Okay.
confrontational?
okay, there are.
I mean, my butt often says confrontational, and I would love ways to avoid that.
Okay. It's hard to do, like, just to give you like a general answer to that. It's a very case by case kind of thing. For the most part, you need to express it not as a fact, but as your feelings towards that fact. So not your ideas are stupid, but, yeah, but I don't think that killing children in our game is a good idea. But,
No, and what would the and
Yeah.
be?
Yeah, I have no idea what Dan would get for that one.
and let's see if we can do some more brainstorming and come up with an idea we can both agree on.
And we
Okay.
appreciate that you're thinking of ideas.
Right. Right. But instead of giving a blanket statement like, is stupid, why is it stupid? Is it stupid just because you don't, is it a taste issue, or do you really think it won't work for a game? Because if it's a taste issue, then it's a very different conversation. Because why are your tastes more valid than my tastes? But if it's a mechanics problem of, okay, what you're describing will result in a broken game. Like it's a mechanic problem, and
But we
if
don't
do
have
that,
time to do this.
right? But we don't have time to do this. Is a great one. So, okay, switch up.
I'll be
We
the
can
ant.
all shift one
Yeah.
down.
Oh, I don't wanna be the butt.
Okay, who else has a game jam argument or complaint or something that they've dealt with?
Throw out a scope question. I think we should make World of Warcraft with Nintendogs with a little temple run in there.
That sounds
and,
fun.
You know, insert game idea here. With Pokemon, yeah. I think that should be our game idea.
I think we only have 48 hours to make a game.
Okay, so what you're trying to do here, remember, is with the I, you're trying to restate what they've stated so that they know that you were listening.
All right. I do not think we have the time to make that game.
Okay, so what has he expressed to you?
He's expressed that he wants to make a World of Warcraft, Nintendogs. I don't remember what the third one was.
Temple Run.
Okay.
Temple Run spin-off.
Yeah.
Okay,
insert
so with the first
Candy
statement,
Crush.
with the first part of the statement, you are not concerned with anything but making sure that you guys are on the same page.
Okay.
Because given his kind of haphazard description, you don't know that you don't have the same scope because it's not super clear what his game is. You had trouble even reciting back what it was.
Right.
So just with the I statement, you're just trying to make sure that you understand them correctly.
Okay.
And that they understand that you are listening to them.
Okay. I believe you're talking about 4 or 5 different game types in one game.
Okay.
But I'm concerned that we don't have the time in this 48-hour jam.
Yeah.
And I want to come away with a finished game and not something that's unfinished.
Okay. So with the and statement, your and statement was a but statement.
Yeah.
So what you want is a possible solution,
Yeah.
right?
And if you want to make that game, maybe you should find a different team.
How about something that
I'm
addresses
never joining your team in a game jam.
John, one of the things going through this exercise they use to kind of help clear it up is think of it like a compliment sandwich. So the front part and the end part should be kind of nice things, and you squeeze the meat in the middle. So you might say, I understand you have a lot of great ideas for a game, but we're concerned that maybe they would be too much to fit into the weekend, and I'd like to hear your ideas on how you think we might be able to get all this done.
And maybe we could work on this game after that.
Right.
I always
Or
try to interject I'd like to hear your ideas, because that kind of gets them responsible for solving their own problem. They use the monkey analogy too, like they've given you a monkey on your back because they've given you all this stuff to do, they want to make all this stuff. You just give the monkey right back to them by saying, I'd like to hear your ideas on how we solve that problem.
another way, if you want to be more direct, is, and I'd like to hear what and let's see if we can come up with some way to keep the core of your idea, but scale it down to something we can do this weekend. So, okay, reorganize again. All right, somebody else, another game jam problem.
Draw from experience.
These graphics are freaking horrible.
Awesome.
Too many freaking.
I know they're not that great.
But we're working with artists of limited capability.
And I'm interested to hear how you feel they could improve with limited resources.
Okay. So yeah, so that was great, guys. So thank you. Give me a hand. need 3 more guinea pigs. We're gonna do this for a bit. Everybody's gonna go up here. Come on. Yeah, come on. Yeah.
I'm the bunny.
Okay. So, does anybody have a game jam problem? They'd like, yeah.
I'm really grossed out at the fact that you guys haven't showered in 36 hours.
I've been too busy.
Okay, so so rather than using the iBut and to address,
Oh, let's do it.
let's flip it around.
We gotta go with that.
Somebody in your group is complaining because somebody else in your group's a mess.
So for instance, would that be, hey,
So-
John, so-and-so really smells,
Yes,
and
gossip.
it's making it hard for me to work?
Yeah.
From a gossip perspective.
Yeah.
I understand that you have a problem with someone else's stink.
But you're right.
Okay, so here's where
How can I possibly
right, okay.
butt that?
So here's where we start to see where this kind of comes across. These 3 words are primarily for when somebody is coming to you to deal with the problem, right? If I'm in a group, if I'm in your group and I haven't showered, you can't come to me with an I but and statement until I provide some input. So what you need to do is you need to spark this with something. So, Carol, if you're in my group and I haven't showered in like a week and a half, you need to come up with some way to start this conversation. And usually unfortunately it's just the awkward of like, dude, you smell bad, right? And then I will come back with something like, we're in the middle of a game jam, I don't have time. And then you can start applying the I but and of addressing, continuing that discussion about this problem. So if you had come to me because I stink like a dead wildebeest, and I just told you I'm too busy, how do you use I but and to address that situation?
I understand that I stink like the backside of a hippo.
So we're supposed to be redirecting
So-
to convince
right.
you to go.
Right, so you're trying to convince me that I need to shower. You've come and you've told me that I smell, and I've just told you I'm too busy. And so now you're trying to use the I but and to convince me to go do something because like people are throwing up in the back room.
So his is
Right.
reversed.
Right.
So I understand that
So-
this is a problem, and then I'd say something like, but it's causing other people to be unable to
Right.
work.
Right, so for something like this, it'd be, I understand that we're really busy, and we're in the middle of a game jam and it's really busy, but your smell is starting to impede other people's ability to work, and let's see if we can find some way to help you freshen up that doesn't take you away from the work too long. And that's a really awkward one, because it's very difficult. Trust me, I've had this conversation. There's nothing more uncomfortable than the "you smell bad" conversation.
So you lay on the floor and you get upwind.
Because at this point, it very much is a confrontation about something that is very personal. Other,
So in this particular situation,
yes.
if you don't want to have that confrontation, can you be passive aggressive and just say, man, it's stinky, someone needs to like shower, and then hope that they get the picture?
So there are a couple problems with passive aggression. One, you're assuming that the other person will realize that it's aimed at them, right? It's one thing if there's only 2 guys in the house and I leave a passive aggressive note to my roommate, because who the hell else would it be for? But if I'm in a room, if it's a game jam and we're in a room of 60 stinky, smelly programmers, and I happen to be the one that smells worse, but you just make a statement like, it smells bad in here, A, it's not gonna sound like something that you want addressed. It's just gonna sound like a general comment of, it smells bad in here. Why, yes, it does. And if you make it more pointed of, man, people in here really need to shower, and be like, man, you're right, Ben really does need to shower. He smells like ass. Unfortunately, you do want to directly address whoever you're having the problem with. Because dancing around the problem is not going to solve the problem. And if you try to just repress it, ignore it, you might be able to ignore it for like the course of a game jam. So don't get me wrong, like that's a strategy you want to employ at game jam. Most of us can choke down the urge to stab a human being for 48 hours. Most of us. But it's not something that's going to work for you long term. It's not going to something that's going to work for you once you get, you go back to work and, the person who's sitting next to you at the desk just keeps tapping on the desk, or they're playing Disney music all freaking day long and it's driving you mad. We live in a world where unfortunately you have to deal with people on a semi-permanent basis. And so what I'm trying to equip you for is not just the game jam, but in general, how can we work with other people, especially since, we're all a little, we're all kind of social misfits. That's why we're here, right? That's why we love games so much. Also because they're fun. But nobody is good at this confrontation. Nobody likes doing it. But it'll make you a lot happier in the long run, just address some of those problems. Because the alternative is to just swallow it, deal with it, and you're dealing with the problem long term, so whatever's bugging you is gonna continue to bug you. But now you're also gonna start resenting the person because they haven't magically picked up your brain vibes and fixed the problem. So now not only do I have to deal with Ben's stink, but now I kinda hate Ben because he still stinks.
And then I hate you because I can tell you're being passive aggressive
Right,
towards me.
right, and it just turns into a vicious cycle until one day, he ninja kicks me in the head. So yeah, so any other like game jam?
I have one. Okay, so the scenario is, let's say it's the last 4 hours of game jam, we're crunching, and I say to John, these PNGs you saved out, they don't have transparent backgrounds. We've got white boxes behind everything. Can you please resave these with transparent backgrounds? And John says, I think it's just fine the way it is. It's just a crappy game jam game, and we don't have time.
Okay. So, all right. So you guys think you give me a second, or think you got it?
You got 9?
So with the I, you're just trying to restate what the person just said to you that you're confronting. So whoever, in this case, me, because I'm the artist, I've just told you that I don't think we have enough time and I don't think this game is worth the effort. I'm disagreeing with your priorities. So all you have to do is rephrase that to me to make sure that we're both on the same page as to what we're talking about.
They're really good at communication.
Okay, that's just fine. Right? Would you feel more comfortable in one of the other spots? Or do you want to sit down and we can, or would you like somebody else to, or we can have somebody else take your spot if you'd like.
That'd be comfortable not being the guy starting out.
Okay, cool. Then, excellent, awesome.
Do you want to be the eye? I can be the hand. We can switch
Yeah,
all
yeah,
around.
let's do that.
Okay, awesome.
So, I hear that you're saying that you don't think we have the time to save out transparent backgrounds for our pings.
But it wouldn't take all that time to make the change.
Okay, and I think we can work on that together.
Excellent, awesome. Great job, guys. So we've been here for about an hour. Does anybody else have, want to try this? First off, is anybody interested in giving this a shot? Okay, all right. Does anybody have questions about the whole process or about a specific problem that you're like, this is a confrontation I don't know how to deal with? Yeah.
Does any of this deviate, like, in the course of Game Jam, we're working on like a small indie title, we're working with people who aren't getting paid to do what they're doing.
Right.
So like, I'm afraid to, I guess, have a confrontation with somebody, because I need them to work on this title, like, I can't do this by myself. And they can just leave, there's nothing keeping them there.
Right.
So how do I, adjust to that?
The thing to remember is that they have the same sort of feeling, right? I mean, they're there because they want to make a game. They may not like where your game is at, but at the end of the day, they came to the game jam. Nobody comes to a game jam not wanting to make a game. So they share that with you already. And the confrontation is not, if handled properly, a confrontation like this, the whole point is not to just break, right? It's not, I understand you're doing the best you can, but your art still sucks and you're fired. Right? What you're trying to, you're both working towards a common goal, and what you're trying to bring up with them is something that they should, in the context of a game jam, appreciate, which is, we're working on this collaboratively, and I'm seeing a way that you can make this game better. That you may not have noticed. You may have noticed that, so I wouldn't worry too much about confronting someone about something like this. If it escalates, then yes, it could turn into something like, well, screw you guys, I'm going home. And if that happens, fine. That person, that's a super difficult person, and I mean, at the end of the day, you really want to be working with someone like that. There are more artists, there are more programmers, sometimes there are more sound people at the game jams. but Scott won't quit because you asked him to redo a sound, right? So, and then also keep in mind, how reasonable are your requests and which battles, picking your battles, for the transparency thing, maybe they have a valid point. Maybe that transparency background thing on the PNGs isn't that big of a deal, and making it would be easy for them, but you convincing them of that is also a waste of your time and your energy that you could be spending on other stuff in the game. And so do the full cost-benefit analysis of what you're confronting them about, and realize, like, okay, if this is a minor problem, but it's going to be a big problem getting you to fix it, let's just move on. It's a game jam game. Let's move on and focus on getting the game done. So, yeah.
So it's a different kind of conflict that we've faced in putting our games out there on the internet is web conflict. People leaving comments and saying shit about your games that whether or not it's warranted, it still makes you feel terrible. How do you respond? Do you respond? What's the best way to handle that sort of situation if you're putting your games out in a public forum?
Okay, so I would strongly advise against confronting people on the internet unless they are doing something that is baseline offensive, right? Saying my game sucks, fine, whatever. Like, it hurts my feelings a little bit, but who knows? You're some random person on the internet. I'm not going to fight this battle. Now, if they're on your company forum and they're spewing ethnic slurs everywhere, that's a different type. That's a confrontation that needs to occur. But unfortunately, the internet being what it is, it's just a giant anonymous mass that gives everybody the right to be the biggest tool they can be. And the best advice I can give is when dealing with commentary, especially the anonymous crowd commentary, is to understand it for what it is and deal. Which I hate saying, but we as a species have not really figured out a good way to get people to stop being jerks on the internet. And there are industries built on it. So unfortunately, I don't have much more to give you other than you're still awesome. Your game is not you.
So you don't feel like it's worth turning it
Right.
around and trying to find positive?
If you have a particularly, if they're making valid points, I guess there's different types of criticism, right? There's your graphics suck, which can possibly turn into a, that could turn into a productive conversation of like, what, is it our shadows? Is it, is it our shaders? Like what? Can you give me more directions? Right, is our texture, is it not high resolution? Are you running it on an old machine? That type of conversation, yes. And that type of criticism is something that you can possibly turn around and turn into a meaningful discussion. If it's, your game is bad and you should feel bad, like, that dude's a troll, like, ignore him. And also, I would say also with the internet, keep in mind aggregate of numbers. One guy complaining about the graphics is not meaningful. That's probably not meaningful feedback. If you have a lot of complaints about a similar problem, the general consensus is your graphics are bad. Then that's a conversation, and in terms of the internet, you probably want to bring a few select people that you've seen through their forum posts are more reasonable people that will actually, or are more reasonable and are more technical, because it's not super helpful to have an in-depth technical discussion with somebody that's not on the same level as you, in terms of getting stuff resolved. And so get a smaller subset, let it be known that like, hey, we recognize that you guys all hate my dragon because he's pink. We've set up like an advisory group. I'm meeting with these particular students. We're gonna try to fix it in a patch. Please stop turning my forum into a moat of rage. So, and I guess that probably leads to the last type of person we haven't really covered, which is the truly irrational sociopath, right? The person that you do this to, and they just completely steamroll you and are like, I don't care what you think. Unfortunately, those people, like, there isn't a good way to deal with a sociopath other than to let them see that what you want is in their interest, right? Figure out what they are after and figure out a way to contextualize what you're trying to accomplish in terms of what they care about more than anything else in the world, be it control, be it, be it money, whatever the deal is. If you have somebody that's completely unwilling to see your side of the story and have a rational discussion, then you have to start getting into the kind of evil manipulative shit of saying like, oh, well, if we do this, it will make more money, see? Yeah, that thing I came up with, that was a great idea, I'm glad you had it. Like, that type of stuff, which unfortunately, my best advice would be like, if you have to deal with a person like that, get out.
So at the jam, we should find a new group if that person is in our group?
If you honestly think if it's not something that you can deal with, I mean, there's the option to just swallow it. I highly recommend you try confronting them, because it could just be that they're just so socially inept, like they've never had someone tell them what they're doing is not acceptable. You'd be amazed at how many people have been dickheads their entire life and have never been told you're being a dickhead, knock it off. And if it becomes a really big problem at the game jam in particular, please come see one of the organizers and we can try to see what we can do. Because it's one thing if some random guy comes and tries to have that discussion. It's a completely different thing if the guy who was talking at the front of the room is now having a talk with you because you're being a jerk. And sometimes, unfortunately, that pure authority is necessary before a conversation like this can start. And if they're being truly dickheads and they're just like pouring stuff in your laptop and if somebody becomes a true problem and they're just spewing, racial and gender slurs at people, then we'll kick them out if they're being too big of a jerk about it. We don't like to, and we never, to the best of my knowledge, we never have. It's never gotten to that point. But if we, Maryland, somebody truly horrendous comes in, then we'll do it.
Were you trying to think of Charles Manson?
Yeah, that's it. I kept thinking Marilyn Manson, so thank you. Yeah, no, Charles, if he comes in, we'll kick him out because, it's supposed to be a supportive environment, supportive and fun environment, and ultimately, at the end of the day, if somebody's that negative and that unable to listen to reason, we don't want them there.
I'd like to throw it out there that I would really enjoy doing a game jam with Marilyn Manson, because I think he would have some pretty awesome ideas.
So, all right, oh, yep.
So I have a question scenario. So there's this person in our office that sometimes during discussions or critique gets very passionate and excited, and it sounds very much like they're yelling at the other people in the discussion. And I know that this person really is not yelling and is just really excited about whatever we're talking about, but it sounds like an angry Italian asshole. How would you handle that person?
Okay, so if I start to do that.
It's me, by the way.
Yeah, no, okay, so what you do, because I do the same thing, I get super excited and I start talking over people, and I get really loud and I get animate, and this works extremely well because that's exactly the type of behavior that this kind of confrontation is designed for. Is somebody who's doing something wrong but doesn't realize they're doing something wrong, or knows that it's wrong but doesn't realize they're doing it at this moment. And you just need to be like, okay, I understand that you're super duper excited about this idea, but you're starting to creep me out, and let's tone it down a notch, right?
So saying, you're being crazy, stop yelling, doesn't work?
No, because you have to acknowledge, because he's not being crazy, he's just super duper excited about this thing. So you got to acknowledge his excitement, because that's the big thing. When people like Ben or myself get super excited, we mostly want other people to be excited with us, and we just want people on board. So by acknowledging that, you'd be like, I understand that your idea is awesome, but you're scaring the crap out of me. And I need you to slow down.
Yes, there's a disconnect because it's usually someone will say, you're yelling, and to me I'm like, but I'm not yelling. I'm just excited. And so then I'm like,
He doesn't say
I'm
that.
not yelling.
Right.
And then I yell, but I'm not yelling.
I'm raising my voice, I'm not yelling. Yes, so that sort of thing. Be mindful that people aren't perfect, so even if you have this confrontation, don't expect like a 180, Ben's still gonna do that, I'm still gonna do that. Keep doing it if it keeps being a problem, keep reminding us. The goal of this is to get through that initial, I need to let Ben know that what he's doing is unacceptable because he's scaring the clients, right? Once that conversation is had, and he's kind of, you've had that conversation, he kind of acknowledges okay, I can see how that would scare people, I will try harder. Then, when it happens again, be like, Ben, we talked about this, you're here, need you here, buddy. And he'll get it because you've already gone through the process, right? And he just needs to be reminded of it's that accountability, right? You've already described and acknowledged the gap. You've come up with a solution to that gap, and now it's just holding them to that. And so people aren't perfect. Sometimes they need reminders of hey, you said you'd work on this. This is what we were talking about. And hopefully they'll be like, okay. So,
Before you finish off, Dave, I do that, and I didn't realize I was doing that until I recorded some tutorial videos for some people, and I listened to them back, and I couldn't understand what the hell I was saying.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that that made the video, and then I really realized, oh, geez, I gotta slow it down.
yeah, I will say this is. I had when I was residence hall director, I had a parent fly from California to St. Louis because his daughter's roommate was leaving a wet towel on the floor. And he came to yell at me because I personally had not done anything about it, even though I had not even been told it was going on. And I butt-ended his ass, and he calmed down. It works amazingly well. I've been using it on my parents for years. So give it a shot. Tinker with it. Try it out for size. If you have if this is something you're really interested in, again, I highly recommend these books. And if you want to take a look at them, that's why I brought them. So, but yeah, thanks for coming out. And if you have any other questions, come find me. So.